investigative activities of the security forces. Any public officer who tries to destroy or hide any official document can be sanctioned. And if you're having difficulties, the ATI unit will help. So, what if the chemicals in the mosquito spray are toxic? What if the agency did not even try to get back the money they paid out? Call or email your MP. Share the concern, because as your elected representative, they can represent your questions to the government ministers in the House. Remember, it is the job of parliamentarians to monitor and hold the government to account on your behalf. Is not every country give citizens this kind of power, you know? And at 20 years we have this law, and we barely use it. So access information and mind your business, Jamaica. Visit jampja.org today to see what information we access to make it easier for you to hold the government to account. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Good things are happening in Jamaica. Our unemployment remains the lowest it has ever been, which means more Jamaicans are working and can provide for themselves and their families. Your government is building Jamaica.
Can you imagine getting a marketable skill for free? Your government has made it possible for anyone wanting to learn a skill to get free training through the Heart and STA Trust. Learn a new skill and expand your horizons.
Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. You fi check out the servings, just do the maths. Not taking too much, finger below the facts. Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. Take note of the sodium, the sugars and the fats. 5% or less in the on the right track. You fi zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. Vitamins, minerals and fiber to 20% and more that good for you. Nutrition facts. You feel check the nutrition facts. You feel check the nutrition facts. Less sugar, less salt intake, and less fat. You feel
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Jamaica Moves, the Heart Foundation of Jamaica, the National Health Fund, and JAPNet.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Join the conversation focusing on Jamaica's development. Tune in to the post-cabinet press briefings. Wednesdays live at 9 a.m. with a rebroadcast at 9 p.m. right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Me, I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
People always say government must be held accountable. But is whose job to keep government accountable, and what that really mean? Well, you see, when ministers and public officials have to provide answers for decisions made and can face consequences for those actions and decisions, that means they're being held accountable. Keeping government accountable is a key responsibility of our elected representatives, and the Parliament provides special tools or mechanisms just for this. As citizens, we need to understand how they work so we can play our part to ensure that the members of Parliament we elect are using the tools and doing their job well. Here are 4 of the primary tools you should understand and talk to your MP about. Tool number 1, Minister's Statements. To effectively monitor the government, MPs need to stay informed. Every Tuesday when Parliament sits, different cabinet ministers are scheduled to give an update on decisions they're making on our behalf. These updates are called Statements by Ministers. They cover a wide range of national issues that other MPs, media, and citizens may have questions about and wish to examine further. That brings us to tool number 2. What you do when you want information? You ask questions. And that's why we have Question Time. Both opposition and government MPs can submit questions to the Prime Minister or Cabinet Ministers for details on, for example, how a contract was awarded or expenditure to purchase tablets for schools. So if you ever have a question for a government minister, try asking through your MP. After all, that's why they're your political representatives. They should represent your questions and concerns to the government. Tool number 3, parliamentary debates. When cabinet ministers present the government's proposals for new policies, laws, and programs, parliamentary debates allow both opposition and government MPs to air concerns, make suggestions, and endorse proposals. If you ever watch those debates, you know they can get a little fiery. But the debate is important as it informs decisions and continues until a vote is taken on the way forward. Then we have tool number 4, parliamentary committees. The general sittings of Parliament are not always sufficient for detailed examination of government work, so oversight committees are formed using government and opposition members to do just that. Some committees like the PAC and the PAAC are in place for an entire parliamentary term. Their job is to monitor the use of public funds to find ways to increase value and efficiency while reducing waste and corruption. Cabinet and state ministers are not appointed to oversight committees since they are a part of the government. Some committees are formed when a need arises. For example, joint select committees are formed to review draft policies or legislation or to probe other matters of serious national importance. Members of these committees are both opposition and government MPs and senators, and these committees will usually invite citizens to share their opinions, concerns, and recommendations. So there you have it, 4 accountability tools of Parliament that are used to make sure government run right. Visit jampja.org to find contact information for your MP. Invite them to meet with the community so they can better represent your issues and concerns in Parliament and keep government accountable. Get involved and let's make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the private sector.
We want a piece for Jamaica. Yo, what are you? Oh, man, none of that. No, brother, no, man. Can I see you ever play ref? Dirty game, man. Yeah, but a bad game. No, I said, person, come from, brother, I want to live good, man. I want to live good, Bridging. Just shake hand, I can play a little bad, Bridging. Really have to shake hand? Yeah, man, and no badness, Bridging. Just live good, man. Come together, I make the violence done.
Jamaica has more than 28 species of birds, land snails, reptiles, amphibians, and hundreds of flowering plants that are only found in Jamaica. I am Marlon Samuels. Join me to learn more about Jamaica's native and endemic flora and fauna.
Know your natives and endemics. Sundays at 11:15 a.m. exclusively on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Jamaica, I can help you protect our citizens.
Jamaica Eye will play a part in increasing your public safety.
Jamaica Eye is part of an island-wide network of camera surveillance systems designed to increase the safety of you, our citizens. If you have a camera system outside your home or office facing a public space, log on to jamaicai.gov.jm today. Jamaica Eye, we're all connected. The Ministry of National Security, creating a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file the declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the Act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
The Live Good initiative is aimed at promoting healthy, respectful relationships at home, at school, and in our communities. Let's return to the days when members of our communities all participated in rearing our children with kindness, good manners, and discipline. Let's respect each other. Let's become our brother's keeper. Let's replace violence with understanding. Let's all strive to live good.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Washing your hands properly can help keep you and others safe. Remember to wash often, especially before eating or touching your face.
Your safety and security continue to be our priority. We are seeing a downward trend in major crimes, and we are investing $650 million in technology improvement for our police force to provide greater coverage across Jamaica by 2028.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Do your part to prevent mosquito breeding. Mosquitoes will breed in any container that holds water.
Tightly cover water storage containers such as drums, barrels, buckets and tanks. If this cannot be done, pour cooking oil on the water surface. Punch holes in all tins, plastics and beverage boxes to prevent the collection of water before disposal. Cover all tires or fill with dirt to prevent water collection. Scrub all vases once per week to remove mosquito eggs. Use mosquito repellents to protect yourself from mosquito bites. Dispose of garbage properly by placing in plastic bags and securing properly to prevent water collection.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
To fight crime and violence in your country, your government has invested over $9.7 billion into national security systems. This includes the construction and renovation of dozens of police stations, the acquisition of critical security equipment such as patrol vessels and police vehicles, the recruitment and training of more police officers, and the build-out of the Jamaica Defense Force. Your government is investing in your safety. We are building Jamaica.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Remember that big project the government announced them was going to from when? You ever catch yourself a wonder what to it? Stop wonder like an outsider and start move like the country belong to you. You have a right to publicly owned information, and the Access to Information Act gives you that power. I know you have enough questions about how government are run or not run, so let me show you how it works. Say mosquito spraying going on in your community, your children asthmatic and you want to know what chemicals are in it. Or what about that Auditor General report on a public official getting twice his salary with no proper approval? Is your taxes and you want to know if they paid it back? First, do some basic searching to see what is already on government websites. If you don't see what you're looking for, make a formal ATI request by completing the application form on the ATI site or sending a letter or email. And remember, you don't have to say why you need it. It is your right to know. Make sure you send your request to the right agency, and once they confirm receipt, they get 30 calendar days to provide the information. A maximum of 60 if extra time is needed. Yes, I know you want access to everything, but sensitive documents are protected from the public for up to 20 years. For example, documents that would expose a citizen's personal privacy, or those dealing with cabinet discussions, the Governor General's office, or information on the investigative activities of the security forces. Any public officer who tries to destroy or hide any official document can be sanctioned. And if you're having difficulties, the ATI unit will help. So, what if the chemicals in the mosquito spray are toxic? What if the agency did not even try to get back the money they paid out? Call or email your MP. Share the concern, because as your elected representative, they can represent your questions to the government ministers in the House. Remember, it is the job of parliamentarians to monitor and hold the government to account on your behalf. Is not every country give citizens this kind of power, you know? And at 20 years we have this law, and we barely use it. So access information and mind your business, Jamaica. Visit jampja.org today to see what information we access to make it easier for you to hold the government to account. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Good things are happening in Jamaica. Our unemployment remains the lowest it has ever been, which means more Jamaicans are working and can provide for themselves and their families. Your government is building Jamaica.
Can you imagine getting a marketable skill for free? Your government has made it possible for anyone wanting to learn a skill to get free training through the Heart and STA Trust. Learn a new skill and expand your horizons.
Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. You fi check out the servings, just do the maths. Not taking too much, finger below the facts. Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. Take note of the sodium, the sugars and the fats by percent. Unless you're on the right track. You fi zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. Vitamins, minerals and vitamin 2, 20% and more that good for you. Nutrition facts. You feel check the nutrition facts. You feel check the nutrition facts. Less sugar, less salt intake, and less fat. You feel
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Jamaica Moves, the Heart Foundation of Jamaica, the National Health Fund, and Japan.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Join the conversation focusing on Jamaica's development. Tune in to the post-cabinet press briefings. Wednesdays live at 9 a.m. with a rebroadcast at 9 p.m. right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Me, I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
Welcome to PBCJ's coverage of the sitting of the Senate. I'm Simone Absalom Gale, and I'll provide a brief outline of what's expected to take place during the sitting. But before we begin, did you know that Thomas Tavares Finson is the President of the Senate, and he has been in that chair since March 2016. He is an attorney at law. According to his Instagram page, at Tom Tavares Finson, he is a criminal lawyer and a King's Counsel. On the agenda for this session, the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025 is to be taken. For your information, this is an act to recognize and promote teaching as a profession, to contribute to improving the quality of teaching and learning in Jamaica by regulating the entry and standing of members of the teaching profession, to establish and maintain the registers of teachers and the role of instructors, and more. Also, the Joint Select Committee report on the Jamaica Teaching Council Act is down to be taken. If time allows, the Joint Select Committee report on the Insolvency Act is to be taken, and the Joint Select Committee report on the Security Interest in Personal Property Act is to be taken. In finance, a security interest is a legal right granted by a debtor to a creditor over the debtor's property, usually referred to as collateral, which enables the creditor to have recourse to the property if the debtor defaults on making payments or otherwise performing the secured obligations. And that's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a sitting of the Senate. No visitors shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed unless so authorized by the presiding officer. And there should be no smoking inside the Parliamentary building. The proceedings will start in a few moments.
No more guarantors for student loan. Your government cares about your education, and we don't want you to ever have to worry about going to university. The Students' Loan Bureau has a loan for you so you can focus on your future.
Jamaica's economy is in the best shape ever. Everybody abroad and abroad are talk about it. Your government is investing in our hospitals, parks, community clinics, roads, and water infrastructure. Every student attending Heart and STA Trust under the New Care Initiative will get $15,000 each month to help cover their travel expenses to the Heart School they're attending and get an extra $13,000 each week while they're training.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Jamaicans, practice proper disposal of garbage, and if items can be reused, recycle them. We all have a part to play in protecting our environment from pollution. We are building Jamaica.
Young Jamaicans up to 35, your government will reserve up to 10% of NHT Housing Solutions over the next 5 years, just for you, with 100% financing up to 15 million Jamaican dollars. This is how we are empowering and breaking the cycle of poverty meaningfully. Your government is caring for you.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
What if I told you that you own thousands of acres of land, more than 100 companies with over 100,000 employees and billions in the bank? Well, I have news for you. You do. Jamaica belongs to you, and you need expert protection to safeguard those assets for your future, your children, and your children's children. And you already have it. A key protector is our Auditor General, whose role is outlined by the biggest, baddest law in all the land, the Constitution. The Auditor General's main job is to examine the financial reports of all public entities to ensure that they are accurate and that public funds are used appropriately and effectively to deliver public goods and services without waste, theft, and mismanagement. Here's how it's done. A team of highly trained auditors reviews and verifies that the right amount of money is spent on only what's approved in the national budget and in accordance with the laws and policies that protect public resources. Now, the right amount of money can be spent on the right things and Jamaicans still no benefit. So the Auditor General assesses the outcome for programs and projects as well. Audit reports will also contain recommendations to improve the operations of the audited entity, and the findings are submitted to the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, the PAC. Every year, an annual report is submitted by December 31. Both government and opposition MPs serve on the PAC, and they summon public entity managers to answer questions so that they and the public, the real owners, yes, you, can understand what went wrong and how to prevent a recurrence. What are some things that can and do go wrong? Cost and time overruns, missing financial reports, unreported losses, unauthorized spending, unsupported payments, unlawful contract.
And laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections. The result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Be seated, please. Good morning, members. Call to order the sitting of the Jamaica Senate for today, Friday, April 11, 2025. And before we get into the order of business, we have today with us And my pleasure to have them here today for the fact that on the agenda there is a bill which specifically addresses situations in the schools. The Teaching Council bill is on our agenda today. And we have with us students from the Queens High School. There are 10 students, 1 teacher from Queens. We also have with us Calabar High School, also 10 students and 1 teacher. And we are expecting to have with us, although they are not present at the moment, but I will make mention so that once they arrive, we don't have to have that break for introduction. But the St. Hilda's High School will also be here, and they are having amongst their numbers 22 students and 2 teachers. Should be enough. All right, in addition, and we have invited him to sit in the well. We have Dr. Mark Smith, President of the Jamaica Teachers Association. Harvey Levy, immediate past President of the YACJ. And Bishop Dr. Michael Smith, head of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches, present with us. Not here? And before we go on, I have a message, a sympathy message on behalf of the President, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate. Sympathy message on the Jet Set nightclub tragedy in the Dominican Republic. I was deeply saddened to hear the tragic news on Tuesday that the roof of the Jet Set nightclub in the Dominican Republic had collapsed, claiming the lives of over 200 people and injuring more than 150. On behalf of the Senate of Jamaica, I extend our heartfelt condolences to the government and people of the Dominican Republic. My heart goes out to the victims, their families, and all those affected. Such a devastating loss is felt far beyond national borders, and in times like these, the Caribbean family stands united in grief and solidarity with our Dominican brothers and sisters. May the families find strength and comfort in the support of the regional and global communities. Our thoughts and prayers remain with all those mourning and recovering in the wake of this heartbreaking tragedy. And at this time, I will invite Minister Johnson Smith, who is our Minister of Foreign Affairs, to make her comments. Minister Johnson Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on behalf of this side, we add our voice of sympathy in respect of the loss of life incurred during that tragic accident earlier this week. Mr. President, I just returned last night from the meeting of the CELAC countries, that is the Latin American and Caribbean community. It is the 33 member states who sit together, all members of the OAS, save the United States and Canada. We were hosted by the government of Honduras. And I therefore had the opportunity in those circumstances, together with our brothers and sisters from Haiti, to extend our condolences and solidarity with the government and people of the Dominican Republic. Each and every one of us present did so on behalf of our governments and people, as these matters are one are of great emotive content, Mr. President. Mr. President, if I could take the opportunity, however, to read the official message of sympathy sent by Prime Minister Holness to His Excellency Luis Abinader, President of the Dominican Republic, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, so that it may be placed on the record. Mr. President, it states, on behalf of the government and people of Jamaica, I convey heartfelt sympathies to the government and people of the Dominican Republic following the collapse of the roof of the Jet Set nightclub in Santo Domingo on the 8th of April, 2025. I note with great sadness the tragic loss of at least 200 lives and injuries to over 150 people. The government and people of Jamaica extend deep condolences to the bereaved families and our best wishes for speedy recovery for those who have been injured. The government and people of the Dominican Republic are in our thoughts and prayers at this time of national mourning. As you continue the search and rescue operations, please be assured of Jamaica's solidarity and support as the Dominican Republic navigates one of the nation's most heartrending events. Please accept, Excellency, the assurances of my highest consideration. Mr. President, we note, of course, that subsequent to the sending of this letter, that the search and rescue operations have been terminated and they have moved to another phase, as it has been understood that they are unlikely to recover any further living persons. So again, we emphasize our sorrow at the loss of life in such circumstances, and we convey our thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Minister Smith. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. We, of course, on this side would like to associate ourselves with the condolences to our regional brothers and sisters and the people of the Dominican Republic on this horrible tragedy. And we join in extending sympathy to all those, the families of those affected. However, this week has been marked not just by that tragedy, but by significant turmoil in the global trading system. And I was wondering if a statement will be made by your colleague minister to address that this morning. I haven't heard the business statement from the leader of government business yet, but I am hoping it was not on the agenda. But given the huge impact, not just on Jamaica, but on the world trading system, I am anticipating that something will be said by the minister who, in the Senate, who has responsibility for the economy.
Mr. President, thank you. Mr. President, I thank the Leader of Opposition Business for having joined with the message of sympathy. And although incongruous, I understand his joining of the issue of trade at the time which he took his feet. I wish to just advise that not only have we had a preliminary meeting internally with the Office of Trade Negotiations and representatives within the CARICOM Secretariat, Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, and my ministry, but this afternoon I will have to exit the Senate to join the Prime Minister on a meeting of heads of CARICOM to discuss this very issue. Prime Minister is the lead Prime Minister on the matter of external negotiations, and we therefore will be not only discussing the circumstances insofar as they affect Jamaica, but the region as a whole. And I believe that there will be an update by the Prime Minister subsequently on that. So I think it would be premature for us to make a statement, which is why it has not been mentioned. But I thank the Leader of Opposition Business for having raised the matter, which has given me the opportunity to also place on the record some of the activities which are underway. I also note that an interim position may have been put forward by the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce at the post-cabinet briefing on Wednesday, which would have been reported on publicly. As I've just returned last night from Honduras, I'm not aware of the contents of it. However, I do know that the matter remains not only forefront of our ministerial agenda, but will be on they are also on that of the Prime Minister as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to join in the condolences being expressed to the community in the Dominican Republic. Thank you, Mr. President. It is very heavy for me because, in fact, my son, my older son, is at school in the DR, and his school community is directly affected. One of his classmates has lost both parents. The head of the Banco, the AFP Popular Bank, the CEO, and his wife, her sister, and her brother-in-law also passed in that very horrific accident. And so it is with a very heavy heart that I convey condolences to the community of the Dominican Republic, as our Caribbean brothers and sisters who are going through a very difficult time. But both ladies, Johanna and Elvira, were individuals that I personally reached out to as I saw to my son adjusting to being in Dom Rep. And these were individuals who I would have connected with. Johanna was celebrating her birthday. And it is not impossible that I could have been there too. So sometimes we don't recognize the impact of these instances, but know that Dom Rep is in very heavy, heavy mourning right now. And let us, as best we can, send whatever energies we can of support, in kind or otherwise, to that community. Because it is a very heavy loss, and there is a lot of grief within the Caribbean. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, Senator Longmore. Statements by...
There's a normal housekeeping of accepting members who are attending the sitting of the Senate virtually. And I believe Senator Janice Allen applied for and was approved. It has not been let in. So I'm
all right,
that be attended
thank you.
to.
But I made inquiries before I started, and I was told that there was no member who have sought that privilege. And that request, Senator Lambert Brown, in compliance with the standing orders, has to come in a particular form. It doesn't come through a request that is being made from the floor. So I inquired of the clerk whether any requests were made, and I was told none was made. Senator Brown. Senator Brown. Senator Brown. All I'll ask I ask the clerk if there is any. The request comes, the request is to be done in writing, and it comes to the clerk. We must follow our standing orders. And I'll make this comment, because what I find when certain things are done, and the public is given the view, sometimes by members, on the comments that are made, that it is a cow down and hold down and trying to suppress type of activity. That we have standing orders that governs how the Senate operates. And so I made the inquiry this morning, and I was given a response. All right? So if the clerk can direct me to where that was done and whether it conforms with the standing orders, I don't have a problem in seeking the Senate's approval for it. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following: Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica International Free Zone Development Limited for the financial year 2019-2020. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the National Water Commission for the financial year 2020-2021. Ministry Paper number 12 of 2025 entitled Subscription to the 2018 International Finance Corporation General Capital Increase. Quarterly Report of the Independent Commission of Jamaica for Quarter 4 of 2024, reflecting the period October to December 2024. The Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Accounts, Head 6000, at the Office of Service Commission for the year 2015-2016. And by way of information, report of the Ethics Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the motion for exemption brought on behalf of the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwestern. Thank you.
Petitions, papers, my apologies, bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notes of motions given orally. Sorry. Reports from committees. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I beg to lay on the table of the Senate a copy of the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to conduct the statutory review of the Security Interests in Personal Property Act, which is for short form SIPA. Thank you.
Senator Morris Dixon.
Mr. President, I beg to lay on the table of the Senate a copy of the report on the deliberations of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022.
Notes of motions given orally.
Yes, sir. In accordance with the standing orders, I submitted 2 private member motions on Wednesday to the clerk and to the president for approval so that they could be tabled today. I have not been provided with by the Secretariat of the Parliament with the copies and the prompts. Could I be informed what has become of those motions that were submitted?
All right. I'm looking at an agenda here, Senator Lambert Brown, and I do not see that on the agenda. And there's also a process by which motions go through. All right? For them to, no, take it easy, man. Take it easy. Be calm, be calm, be calm. Well, this up. Look here, Senator Brown. Senator Brown, nobody blocks any motions because since I've been here since 2016, I have seen motions come here, majority of which have come from the opposition side, and I've never seen any attempt to block. What I'm saying to you, sir, is that the standing order sets out a process. And I am, the substantive president is not here today. He is the person who would obviously have to give final sign-off having regard to what is contained in the standing orders. And there's a process, comes to the clerk, the president has to review it, and so forth. And you said you have not received what you were anticipating that you would possibly have received. So obviously the process has not been concluded. You said you just sent it in on Wednesday. Come on, Senator Brown. So obviously, Senator Brown, we don't have to debate, and I'm not entertaining any debate on it. Obviously it will be Senator Brown, it will be dealt with in the appropriate manner in keeping with the standing orders, and I'm certain that once it meets the requirement, it will be placed on the order paper. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't say that, sir. I did not say that. I did not say that, and I'm asking you to have a seat. Please. Please. Can you have a seat, please? Senator Brown, have a seat. Senator Bunting.
Mr. President, I think I understand why there's some miscommunication this morning. Both the substantive president and the substantive clerk are absent. Opposition members would not have been given notice, would not have been aware that that is the situation. So they would have proceeded to follow the normal course as directed by the standing orders, to send emails to the clerk and to the president. I think, you know, we're running a parliament. We're not running a party shop. It can't be that if one or two persons...
Senator, no, I'm not going to, Senator Bunting, take it easy.
But you have allowed me to make my point. All I'm saying is, can we have a mechanism?
No, Senator Bunting, please. What you just did is quite unfortunate, to be honest with you.
But I didn't.
It is
unfortunate. What did I do?
It is unfortunate, and it is not a matter that it is even for debate. All right. So, Senator Bunting, please have a.
Mr. President, all I'm saying
Senator Bunting,
can we have a mailbox?
Senator
for the
Bunting
president and the clerk that not just one person has
Senator
access
Bunting.
to.
All right.
That's a simple
all
point.
right. Thank you. But the comments that you made about, I'm not even going to repeat it, but it's quite unfortunate. All right. Thank you. Notes of motions given orally. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to conduct the statutory review of the Security Interests in Personal Property Act, which was laid on the table of the Senate on the 31st day of January 2025, be approved. Mr. President, I beg to give further notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. If it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Morris Dixon.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the report on the deliberations of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022, which was laid on the table of the Senate on the 13th day of February 2025, be approved. Mr. President, I beg to give further notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you, Senator. Minister. Question and answers to questions? Motions that mean... Sir. Senator Lambert Brown.
Yes, thank you, sir. Again, in accordance with the standing orders, I submitted a set of questions to the minister, to be asked of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. That was done in time, sent to the clerk, sent to the President. The clerk has acknowledged receipt of it, and again I'm asking, why are my questions not being tabled today?
It will come, Senator Brown. It will come to the Senate once the process is satisfied. All right? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business require notice. Motions relating to sittings of the Senate. Motions to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Senator Morris Dixon.
Mr. President, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025.
A bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025 read for a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
All right. Members, having been advised by the clerk that he has seen the written request in relation to two members who are not physically present in the chamber, Senators Gabriela Morris and Senator Janice Allen. I seek the approval of the Senate for them to appear virtually. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Public business. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we plan to use our time as efficiently as possible today and to proceed with the reports that have, of which notice has just been given. So Senator Hill will lead on the Joint Select Committee report of the Security Interests in Personal Property Act, and will also, in respect of the Joint Select Committee report on the Insolvency Act, notice of which was given at a previous sitting of the Senate, he will take that forward as well. Senator Morris Dixon will then take together the Joint Select Committee report of the Jamaica Teaching Council Act, which is long awaited, Mr. President. I must say that I recall having sat on committees to review this draft legislation easily more than a decade ago in different capacities. So it is a wonderful thing that both the Joint Select Committee report and the Act will be taken together by Senator Morris Dixon today. Mr. President, I understand that amendments were circulated yesterday and discussions have been held as between the opposition and Minister Morris Dixon, such that while she has received or rather given notice of intention to take the bill through all its concluding stages, that it is likely that the debate will not conclude today, as we will permit for more members who are not present today to participate in such an important national debate. So these are the matters for our public business agenda today, and I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure indeed to remove these for you, sir. It's a pleasure indeed to be able to ask the Senate to accept the report on the Security Interest in Personal Property Act. Mr. President, we spent quite a considerable amount of time in the Joint Select Committee to make sure that this piece of legislation, which seeks to give people who are normally without the traditional forms of acceptable collateral to lenders, land, cars, houses, that kind of traditional form of collateral, to give others who are not so privileged the chance to get loans from lenders on a secured basis. And the security that would be used would be movable items and items that tend to be smaller and of less value than the cars and land that people, that bankers have been trained to accept as normal collateral. I'm very pleased, Mr. President, coming from the banking fraternity where I served for many years, to see that there is a chance for so many people I've known over the years who have wanted to get not a ton load of money, but some money to start a business, some money to help fix a house, some money to help send children to school, and they couldn't get it because they didn't have the smallest of acceptable collateral. The Securities Interest in Personal Property Act, after much discussion, and I want to highlight the kind of people who have been involved. I want to pick out particularly Mrs. Shelley Leon, who is the head of the CEO of the Company's Office of Jamaica, the chief legal officer from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Mrs. Yvette Sutherland Reed, both of them are here this morning, and the other team members who have helped them, people from the Attorney General's office, people from the CPC, people who do the drafting. People who do the drafting. And I want to name the organizations who have participated, just for the record, because we tend to just take, it's a lot of time that was spent here for people to come, and who are they? They had to prepare, they had to come prepared to deliver, had to take questions, and then sometimes they had to take questions from the wider public in the press. The Bank of Jamaica participated, the Development Bank of Jamaica, the Jamaica Agricultural Society, the Jamaica Association of Microfinancing, Jamaica Bankers Association, the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League, the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, Jamaica Bar Association, Kingston Creative, Lascom Microfinance Limited, the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, and the University of the West Indies Faculty of Social Sciences. Now, many really technical professional people came from these organizations. Exceptionally, one or two people came on their own because they wanted to have their voice heard. Very wonderfully, we were able to accommodate all of these. I was pleased to sit in the chair week after week after week. My colleagues from the Senate and who from both sides who came and participated, I appreciate their participation and submissions and correction and say, fix this. And, you know, if you're going to deal with these people, what you're looking at is too cumbersome. Let's make it easier for them to deal with. All that kind of contribution, Mr. President, is what I'm happy to acknowledge. And it has gone very well. It has been well accepted. So, Mr. President, the question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the members to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. I was going to take them one by one. Just to accept the report.
The document, as I understand it, Senator Hill,
yes,
and members, was laid on the 13th of February.
Yes, it was tabled on the 13th.
Tabled on the 13th.
Yeah, both have been tabled already.
Right.
So now it's just to accept the report.
All right. So those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, oh, nope. It said it's been approved. So I move to the second, Mr. President, which is, Mr. Clark is finished.
Senator, just hold a second for me, please. Yeah, man. So, Senator Hill, you're asking for the motion to be approved, right?
Yes. But Mr. President.
Sorry, Senator Bunting, just give me a moment.
For good order, I can understand that there might be a comment, although it's a simple approval, and that would be acceptable.
No, he had what you're having was that the standing orders to be suspended.
Yes, I did that.
Right, and that has been approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was no objection, but I just thought it's normal to invite other members to participate in the debate, not just to go straight to approval. So this act, Mr. President, I recall when it was introduced, was it 2015? 2014. It was groundbreaking in the context of the Jamaican law. It was something not many people were familiar with. And it was intended to really tighten up a lot of what I would call informal or suboptimal microlending arrangements. In fact, I think the Hire Purchase Act was the principal act for this type of business before in terms of security and personal property. And the reality is that I remember many years ago in my capacity as a banker, banking one of the leading furniture and appliance retailers. And what they confessed was that although they would send to repossess pieces of furniture, with a bed, sofa, or whatever, if they weren't paid, the reality is that there was no viable second market for these items. So it was really more the, I guess, I don't know if moral suasion would be the word, or the threat of embarrassment, because it was, you know, you didn't want to see that truck back up in your community to start taking out your furniture. And really what it has done is it has limited the ability of people to get credit. But even with the passage of the act, the truth of the matter is it has really not unleashed any wave. It has not unleashed tons of credit. And having even, although I didn't participate in the Joint Select Committee, having read the report, and as someone with some experience in lending earlier in my career, it's one of these bills or acts that are well-intended, but the devil is in the details in terms of implementation and execution. And what it really, at the end of the day, attempts to do is to make a little more effective the ability to collateralize personal property. But in reality, I think outside of larger items, maybe solar photovoltaic systems or generators. Right, it also includes intangibles. But it's the original purpose that it would cover a wide range of things like appliances and household appliances and all that continues to be very, very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to move to incrementally. As we see what the weaknesses are, we try to correct them, we try to perfect the bill until we get something that is workable and that will unleash more credit, more opportunities to get credit for the least formal in the society. So we have no objection to the report, the content of the report. I think it shows some of the challenges that will be placed before the drafters who will come with the amendments to this bill. But we look forward to, when the bill coming, seeing how well the challenges have been addressed, and then we will have further debate at that time.
So it is for the motion, notes of which you gave earlier, to be approved. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, Mr. President, on the 31st of January 2025, I gave notice of my intention to move a motion for the approval of the report of the deliberations of the Joint Select Committee to consider the report on the Insolvency Act 2014. And that was actually done in October of 2014 from my recollection. Mr. President, again, I'd like to just say how important this Insolvency Act is to doing business in Jamaica, and especially also where creditors are concerned. The secured creditors were particular and got very involved. Lawyers, of course, got involved in this. I want to thank Mrs. Fiola Evans-Roberts, who is the supervisor of insolvency, and she's here, along with, again, Mrs. Yvette Sutherland and their teams, Attorney General's Office, CPC, again, who helped and to move this through for us. Other people were from the wider stakeholders, including the Bar Association of Jamaica, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they're very much involved in doing insolvencies, Don Cox, attorneys at law, Patterson Mayer Hamilton, attorneys at law, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica. They all participated, and what was important as we go through this was the fact that the secured lenders were very, very concerned that as we make these changes, that their position would be protected. And we had to change the act to make sure the supervisor of insolvency had the authority and the power to protect not just the lender and the secured lender, but also the borrower and other parties that would be interested in the resolution of a possible insolvency. The general policy direction is to strengthen the existing legal framework governing insolvency by simplifying procedure and strengthening the role of the Office of the Supervisor of Insolvency to more effectively facilitate the rehabilitation of debtors and preserve viable companies while protecting the rights of creditors. Other jurisdictions have chapters 11, chapter other ones. We didn't have anything similar to that. And so the protecting of the rights of creditors, but also effectively facilitating the rehabilitation of businesses. It does make sense that we allow businesses to go out of business when a certain arrangement could let them stay in business, continue to employ people, and eventually get back to profitability and pay off their debts. So we're happy that this has come to this stage, Mr. President, and I thank the people who have participated so well through the Joint Select Committee, and we hope, just like SIPA, in fact, in the case of SIPA, if I'll just, because they're together, go back to that and say, we had to make serious adjustments on the SIPA bill because certain things had not, in the promulgation, the early promulgation, they were omitted or were not as carefully crafted as they needed to have been, and experience taught us that changes had to be made. Similarly, so in the insolvency legislation that is now before us. So, Mr. President, I'm asking that I now ask that this motion be approved. No, my colleague across the way might want to have a comment. So before I move that it be approved,
Senator Bunting, Senator Brown. Senator Brown.
You're calling Senator Crawford? I can't discriminate against the trade. President.
In a happy mood today.
Minister Hill just a while ago spoke about the two reports. SIPA 2014. I was on that side. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But I was on that side. When the government approached Simsimila passed that bill. Similarly, the insolvency bill. And both bills recognize that there would be a need for review, that they weren't perfect, and that life would teach us where we need to make the adjustment. So in keeping with that system of relay in government, and we expect the baton, Damian, to pass to us soon, time come. Yeah. So that a review is necessary, and the review is being done. But if I take the insolvency bill, have we learned any lesson going forward in terms of the adjustment to be made to what happened with the infamous SSL saga? Because as you rightly says, we're talking about lenders, borrowers, and I note you said other parties. So other party, immediately Usain Bolt jumped to mind as an investor. That's fine. That's fine. But the country wants to know if such insolvency legislation would protect people like Usain Bolt, who has lost millions, billions in this SSL saga, because otherwise we are going to be checking a box. We passed the insolvency legislation. But investors like that aged lady who lost in exchange for a hug millions of dollars, the Usain Bolts, and the hundreds of other investors, our legislation needs to look out for them and protect them. So what would like to know, for example, if when forensic investigation like the Kroll investigation take place, whether the insolvency, Kroll, because, you know, running down the logistics center. So I want to know whether or not reports, forensic reports that are done in pursuant to companies like SSL would be sent to the insolvency department so they can take those issues into account. And of course, the country can be satisfied that when our people, and whether you be an icon or just a vendor on the road who invest your money in these regulated institutions, some of them regulated by the government, whether or not those people are going to be protected. So, what is the insolvency legislation if Bolt loses money and the other people loses money? I hope we will fix that and fix that soon. Usain Bolt needs his money. May it please you, Mr. President.
Okay, Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. The truth of the matter is, Mr. President, the whole field of insolvency practice is a very technical one. Absolutely. Very technical, hard to comprehend by the average person in the society. Hard to comprehend even by professionals in the society, because there are complex rules in terms of priorities of lenders, or I should say creditors, because not everyone may be necessarily a former lender. There can be employees, for example, who have claims on the entity that has become insolvent. And it was recognized when this act was passed that the old arrangements or the previous legislation provided, for example, for a receiver to be put in by a lender or a liquidator to be put in by, the receiver to be put in by a debenture holder, and liquidators could have been appointed by creditors, unsecured or otherwise. But it hadn't provided at the time for what in the United States they call Chapter 11 type bankruptcy or insolvency, which really was an opportunity for a company that that was temporarily stressed in terms of cash flow to repay their lenders or their creditors, that it would give them some space to reorganize their affairs, renegotiate the terms, but that the fundamental business was sound. And it was really the financial arrangements that need to be renegotiated and put on a new set of terms that would allow the cash flow generated from the business to service those who had an interest in it. And that was one of the things that was attempted with the new Insolvency Act. But again, these were fairly complex technical areas. They were put through very quickly. Many of them were obligations we had under the IMF program at the time, separate and apart from the fiscal obligations and the obligations around primary surpluses and reduce our debt to GDP. But there were a lot of legislation that was designed to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our other economic arrangements, to make it easier and more attractive for investors, local or foreign, to invest and to expand. And those were the original objectives, as I recall. It's over a decade now, and it's not that fresh in my memory. However, one of the levers that a receiver, as it was then, or a trustee, is to be able to, in determining the assets available to the creditors, unsecured or otherwise, is sometimes to be able to bring legal suits against those who may have defrauded the company, against those who may have used inside information, etc., to benefit at the expense of the minority or the weakest creditors, like the old lady that you mentioned in the SSL. And we recently saw, I think just this week, the trustee of SSL, they issued a notice that they were soon to make a part payment on the cents on the dollar on the assets that were due to the claimants. And at the same time, we know that the country has spent a lot of money getting a forensic report from a leading firm that provides those services. It's called Kroll, so it's referred to as a Kroll report. It has been mentioned by the Minister of Finance here. And I am concerned whether, and I ask the Minister to respond to this, whether the trustee for SSL, Cadian Campbell, I believe it is, whether the trustee has access to that report, because to my mind, in order for him to ensure that he can pursue all the assets that properly should be in the SSL pool, and that can ultimately be available to settle the obligations of SSL to hundreds of Jamaicans, many of them older persons who will be totally devastated if they can't get back substantial sums of their money, or even not so old persons, but who have substantial exposure, and no matter how wealthy you may be, losing billions is going to hurt very badly, not just the individual, but the reputation of Jamaica and our investment climate. Remember, this was a regulated institution. This was not just any ordinary institution. This was a regulated institution.
Regulated by government.
Regulated by government, regulated by the FSC, an institution that had been on the ladder of compliance of the regulator for a very long time. An institution that got a final warning in 2017 when the chairman, I believe then, was Howard Mitchell. And within a few months, with a change of the board and a change of the executive director, all restrictions were lifted. All restrictions were lifted. And then we have come to later have the debacle that is referred to as SSL. I believe we must have, or certainly the public deserves to have, access to the Kroll report to know the truth of what happened at SSL. And the government has been finding every excuse why not to publish it. But I believe the trustee, if we are to do any justice to these 200 and odd persons who are facing maybe getting a few cents on the dollar, if we are to do justice to these 200 persons...
All right, Senator Bunting, let me hear what the point of order is, please. Senator Fitzhenry, what's the point of order?
His mic is on.
Pardon me?
Yes, his mic is on. Anyway, the standing orders forbids imputing motive against members of the House. The Senator suggested that the government is trying to use every excuse to prevent proffering information into the public domain. The member is not only, in my view, violating the standing orders in terms of imputing motive to members of the House, he's also misleading the Senate, because what he has alleged is false. It's not true. The government has been taking unprecedented steps regarding this SSL matter and hired international assistance, never done before regarding any financial issue in this country. Therefore, when the member seeks to allege that the government is seeking to hide information from the public, he's not only misleading the Senate, but the people of Jamaica. I invite you to have him comport his posture, sir, in accordance with what is true. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Fitzhenry. Senator Bunting, so you know that the standing orders speak to certain things about improper motives to member of either house. So,
which member?
Yes, I'm just telling you that having regard to the comments that you're making, just bear those standing orders in mind when you proceed. Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Bunting.
Yes. The government has made unprecedented efforts. That is true. They've made unprecedented efforts to suppress the Kroll report, to suppress the report of the FSC.
Senator Bunting, hold a second now. No, no. No, that is, hold a second, man. Senator Bunting.
Yes.
The words that you are using is really casting motive. It is. It is.
Suppress cause a motive?
Because there may be, what you're insinuating by that, is that there's some underhanded type of activity. But just as we dealt with the standing orders this morning, when I say that there's a process by which things have to go through, I believe that in some previous debate that we had where Senator Brown was speaking about the firearms bill, it has to go through a process before it.
Firearm bill?
Yes, sir. It has to be gazetted. You had raised some questions at that particular time. There are processes through which things have to go through. There are other issues that may arise. To say that it is a suppression is casting an improper motive. All right? So I just ask you to just temper your commentary in that regard, because there may be issues that speak to confidentiality. It is not that you want to suppress. You don't want to suppress it, but you have to bear those things in mind. So I'm just asking you to be careful with your commentary, Senator Bunting.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Stick within the standing orders because you know that they are there. All right?
We can't criticize the government. What sense it makes to have the Senate? Call the next round.
We're debating the report on the Insolvency Act. SSL is a current example of how the Insolvency Act is operating. The trustee, in fact, the trustee appointed under the Insolvency Act has been given precedence over the FSC's manager, the regulator's manager, in this particular case. So it is a very relevant example of the matters that we are discussing here. And whether, if you want me to withdraw saying the government has suppressed the two reports, well, the government has refused to make the reports available to either the trustee or the public. Now, the public is left to draw their own conclusion. Of course, there may be confidential. Of course, there may be confidential information. You may not want to publish every name. It can be redacted, and it is common practice to redact things which may be sensitive in a report or violate the privacy of an individual. Shut your mouth, no man. You don't have nothing to say.
You know, and I'm not going to sit here for...
nothing to offer.
It's right. So,
hey,
Senator...
No, he's just babbling on. He's just babbling on.
All right, Senator Bunting, focus. Focus here. All right.
So what I'm saying, or the example I'm using, is very relevant to the report that we're discussing now, that we're debating now. Because I'm saying there is no justice for those who are left out of pocket in this situation if reports paid for by taxpayers of Jamaica, if reports that are important in terms of a trustee determining where he may pursue lines of investigation to recover funds that have been improperly spirited out of the entity or the funds that it manages. And the government refuses to make that available. What is the point of order? These are just interruptions, Mr. President.
But I have to hear it. I have to hear it.
These are just interruptions.
Senator Fitzhenry.
The Cole investigation that the member alludes
What's the point of order first?
I'm getting to it, sir.
No, just
but I'm laying the platform. The Cole
here.
investigation that the member alludes to forms part of an investigative process involving a matter as well that is sub judice before the court. It is not a simple matter as the government of Jamaica involving ourselves in an investigative process and releasing a document into the public domain That is part of an investigative process. Therefore, when the member says to the Senate that the government of Jamaica is seeking to suppress or hide or abdicate our duty to make public this information that is part of an investigative process, he's misleading the country, the Senate, the Parliament, and the people of Jamaica. And as a former Minister of National Security, he knows better.
Thank you, Senator Fitzhenry. And that is why I made the comment that there are other reasons. So be careful with the words that you want to use, man. So, Senator Brown, we're dealing with Senator Bunting. And I know that he understands it, you know. He appreciates it. And that is why, of course he does. And that is why he tempered his previous words. But then he got himself into a little trouble. So Senator Bunting, just keep it within the rules of the Standing Order 35. Senator Bunting.
But it is germane to what we're discussing now. First of all, the DPP has said the Crow report is not being used in the prosecution, the single prosecution that is underway. So there is no sub judice issue about Crow report. But even separate from the Crow report, the FSC itself would have done a report. They put a manager in and they would have a report. Why all this secrecy? A very important part of any of the legislation that we're dealing with must be that the public must have confidence in the processes that we set in place to resolve these issues, to resolve insolvencies, especially for regulated institutions. So the question is, why the secrecy? Why the secrecy? I'm suggesting, Mr. President, that when we come to drafting the bill, that there must be explicit sections addressing what can be disclosed and at what point, so that it's not left to the discretion of whoever is in a particular office at a particular time to decide these things, and leave a lot of questions in the public minds about what the true motive of these things are. But I would say, with every passing day, and the minister would know this as somebody who I am sure has appointed receivers in his time, with every passing day, the likelihood of recovering money that has been fraudulently spirited out is diminishing for a number of reasons, because it would have gone through multiple financial institutions, multiple jurisdictions, and it may just have been expended, these funds that came by improperly. So the longer the trustee has to wait to get relevant information that would inform his efforts at recovery, the less likely he will recover anything, and the less that those who are owed money from the institution, by whatever product or by whatever means, the less likely that they will get a material settlement on the sums that are owed to them. Rest my case.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Bunting. Senator Hill.
Mr. President, I've listened to the stuff that has come across the aisle. I just want to make it clear that the Insolvency Act actually deals with lenders. The Financial Security Act, coming out of the FSC, would deal with a brokerage company or a near or a non-deposit taking company in the financial sector, and I know Senator Bunting knows that. I don't know who else over there will have any clue, but I know him know. So the Insolvency Act that we're talking about today will be dealing with lenders' activities and the other activities that deal with portfolio managers and so on will come from the FSC. But having said that, and since he's raised the issue of really our national icon, Usain Bolt, all of us are really give our hearts for two things. He's just lost his father most recently, and we have made that very clear that we share our condolences with him. But the more long-lasting and controversial one that Senator Bunting and his colleague across the way keeps bringing up is about, clearly, the deposit in a financial institution. The government, and he knows this, the government made it clear that we give institutions that must have authority. We make them strong, we establish them, we give them authority to run and regulate businesses. The FSC is one of those. The FSC actually re-rolled it into the Bank of Jamaica. So the Bank of Jamaica is the senior regulator in this country. The government, in making that, and I remember leading it through the Financial Accounting and Audit Act through here in the Senate, made it absolutely clear that the Bank of Jamaica is responsible for that. Therefore, this Andrew Holness administration, we do not give instructions to institutions as to how they must manage their business. We give them policies as to how to do it. As a banker for all my years, that's not what the government does. The government, for instance, we do not say to the Bank of Jamaica, you must have, inflation must be this number. We say we give you a policy guideline range of 4 to 6%. I'm now very pleased, Mr. President, to make sure people understand that inflation today is at the low part of the range, 4.4%, and the higher part is 6%. We're not saying, we do not give regulatory authorities instructions. We do not do that. And Mr. President, I object to that comment. Senator Brown doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay? That's out of order. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And he should be talking about things that he's aware of. This is not what he's talking about. Insolvency Act does not deal with that. The FSC deals with it, and the Bank of Jamaica is a major authority. And we do not interfere. The matter is in the court, and if the court requires certain reports and so on, it will be given. But we do not give instructions. The Andrew Holness administration does not do that. Mr. President, I'm asking you, I know, Mr. President, ask that the motion that's on the table be approved, if it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator, the question is that the motion notes of which was given on the 31st of January 2025 be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I think we are now at Senator Horace Dixon.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take a second reading of a bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025 and to take it as far as I can today.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take second reading of the bill, shortly entitled Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, today I rise to take the first substantial piece of legislation in my capacity as Minister of Education. I want to thank those who are in the well to support me today. I have my permanent secretary, Dr. Kassan Troop, here with me. We have Dr. Gordon here, Anastasia Gordon, Don Douglas Sherland from OPC, and I've left the best for last, Dr. Mark Smith, the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, is also here with us. And I want to acknowledge the students who are here. We are, finding my bill, we're discussing a very important bill here today, and it's very good that our students are here with us as we go through this. I also want to thank those who read the bill early and sent me some comments on it, and also they helped in terms of the early amendments that have been provided. I want to thank the Attorney General Chambers for their review, and also I have to thank someone named Senator Charles Sinclair, who also went through the bill and was able to find some areas where there may have been some numbering differences and some other areas we needed to look at. I really do appreciate that. Mr. President, the JTC bill is long overdue. In fact, Mr. President, you could say this framework has spent over 20 years in the oven, baking slowly, shaped and reshaped by consultations, commissions, and collaborations across administrations and generations. Mr. President, I will also be taking the corresponding Joint Select Committee report on the legislation. Mr. President, please indulge me as I walk the Senate through 20 years of history to recognize, inform, and honor the work of my predecessors. This journey began in 2004, 21 years ago. Colleagues, you will recall that in 2004, the Most Honorable P.J. Patterson, then Prime Minister, established a task force on education reform that led a thorough review of education in Jamaica. This task force was chaired by the late Dr. Ray Davis. Among its many findings, the 2004 Education Task Force report underscored a truth we all know but needed to hear again. Teachers are the backbone of our education system, and improving student achievement begins with them. The report called for greater accountability among educational personnel and put forward the need for clear strategies to ensure we build and maintain a high-performing, high-quality teaching profession. It also noted the existing constraints of the teaching profession in the administrative and management structure of the education system. On that matter, the then government received the report recommending on page 45 to, and I quote, develop and implement a licensing and certification system for all teachers in Jamaica. This will ensure that teachers hone their skills and maintain the currency of their training. Initial licensing will be based on appropriate qualifications with relicensing every 5 years, end of quote. This was in 2004 under the portfolio charge of former Minister Maxine Henry Wilson. In response to the call of the Davis report, the first framework for the establishment of the JTC, the Jamaica Teaching Council, was developed around 2006 by a team of consultants. Some time passed, and this framework was then revised and completed in 2009 by a stakeholder team led by Dr. Winsome Gordon, who is still here and sitting in the well today. Upon completion of the revised JTC framework, Dr. Gordon and representatives of the Jamaica Teachers Association jointly presented the framework to then Minister Holness, now Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who gave them feedback. The then Education Minister Holness was very keen on advancing this process to transform education in Jamaica. In 2008, there was further momentum when a national technical working group was established to support the ministry and guide Minister Holness at the time on the creation of the JTC. This was not a closed-door process. The working group included 4 representatives from the Jamaica Teachers Association, including its president and Secretary General, as well as voices from the University of the West Indies, the Early Childhood Commission, the National Education Inspectorate, the ministry's tertiary unit, and even the former Minister of Education herself, participating in her new capacity as opposition spokesperson, and that was Maxine Henry Wilson. The Joint Board of Teacher Education also played a key role in that process. Students, Mr. President, this was consensus building at its best. Broad-based, inclusive, and intentional. Church leaders and heads of teacher training colleges were also consulted and updated throughout this period. In 2010, meetings convened at the invitation of the Jamaica Teachers Association and various stakeholders across several JTA district offices were brought together to discuss the council and the implications of enabling legislation. By the time 2011 rolled around, a full draft of the bill had been presented to the Ministry of Education, and renewed consultations with stakeholders were in full swing throughout 2011, 2012, and 2013. Then in May 2013, the 5th draft of the JTC bill was prepared by the Chief Parliamentary Council. Between 2011 and 2013, the JTC bill would have been revised 4 times, Mr. President. This indicates that the consultation process was again open, impactful, and dynamic. 11 years after the first recommendation in 2015, legal discussions took place between a team of attorneys and the leadership of the JTA. These discussions led to a positive conclusion, with the ministry accepting nearly all of the JTA's proposals. This goodwill and alignment were formalized in a signed letter between the then Minister of Education, Minister Thwaites, and the JTA leadership. This represented an extraordinary show of partnership and progress. Fast forward to this decade, Mr. President. 16 years after the Davis report, in 2020, Prime Minister Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness once again demonstrated his unwavering commitment to educational reform by empaneling the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission, chaired by Professor Orlando Patterson, to review the education system and make recommendations to improve the quality of education provided to all Jamaicans. The Commission conducted another sweeping review of our education system. Among its many recommendations, Mr. President, you guessed it, finalizing the Jamaica Teaching Council Bill. Located on page 25 of the abridged version of the Patterson Report, recommendation number 14 under the Governance and Accountability pillar states that the JTC Act should be passed urgently and should include the recommendations garnered from years of consultation with the JTA and other interest groups. And I know that very well because I chaired the Governance Committee of the Jamaica Education Transformation Committee, and I wrote that recommendation. And so it brings me a lot of pride today to be able to be bringing this bill here. Mr. President, as a government, we did not wait for the Patterson Report to reiterate the need for an empowered Jamaica Teaching Council. In 2020, the JTC bill was again redrafted and again subject to another round of national consultations. By 2022, it was submitted to a joint select committee of Parliament by former Minister of Education, the Honorable Favour Williams. And Minister Williams led the commitment to the completion of the JSC report, which has been tabled before this body. And I have to thank her quite a bit for all that she did in terms of getting us to this point. This represented the furthest any government has taken the legislation. And Mr. President, I intend to complete this process. This journey has been long. It has been marked by rigorous dialogue, wide stakeholder participation, and commitment from successive administrations. Today, as I bring this bill forward, I honor over 2 decades of work of those who came before. Today, we are taking a bold step toward professionalizing, empowering, and transforming the teaching profession in Jamaica. In the interest of time, Mr. President, I'm also simultaneously and expeditiously taking the resulting Joint Select Report on the Jamaica Teaching Council Act. Mr. President, the work of the committee was nothing short of exhaustive and deliberate. I would like to express and recognize my appreciation to members of the committee for their service to this process. And the members of the committee were outlined in Appendix 2 of that report. And they were the Honorable Favour Williams as chairman, former Senator Ransford Braham, Senator Cavan Gale, former Senator Natalie Campbell Rodriguez, Senator Lambert Brown, Senator Gabriela Morris, the Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, the Honorable Floyd Green, the Honorable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, Ms. Tova Hamilton, Ms. Rhoda Moy Crawford, Dr. Angela Brown Burke, Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, Mr. Robert Miller, and I joined at the end of the process. The committee met 45 times to consider 15 submissions from stakeholders and deliberate on the bill. Though my colleague senator is absent, I must recognize and thank Senator Gale for his near perfect attendance. There were 45 meetings and he did 44 of those meetings. His commitment and presence were a stabilizing force throughout the process. I must also thank Senator Brown and Senator Morris, who is not here, but I think she's online, for their frequent attendance and contributions. They really were there a lot throughout the process. And so this bill belongs to all of them because I know you did a lot of work on it. I'm giving you parentage, Senator Brown. Mr. President, the committee wrote to 19 stakeholder groups inviting them to submit their feedback on the bill. The JSC received submissions from the University of the West Indies School of Education, the University of Technology, the Teachers Colleges of Jamaica, the Jamaica Teachers Association, the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica, the Ecumenical Education Committee, the Jamaica Association of Homeschoolers Society, and we also had 5 separate groupings in relation to that. There was the Center for Personalized Education, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, amongst others. Mr. President, these were not mere consultations for the sake of appearance or tokenism. Their submissions were deeply considered, and out of those consultations came several substantive recommendations, many of which were accepted and have since been incorporated into the redrafted bill that is now before this Honorable Senate. Mr. President, Jamaicans watching at home may wonder, why is the Jamaica Teaching Council bill important? Why does it deserve to become law? What impact will it have? In short, and I'm going to tell them, in short, the JTC bill ensures that the individuals entrusted with shaping young minds are qualified, supported, and held to the highest standards. It is not just about regulation for regulation's sake. The JTC is about embedding professional pride, educational excellence, and national development into our teaching framework. Mr. President, this bill is about treating teaching with the same prestige and standards as attorneys or other professions where standards are designated and enforced, and the profession is protected against unqualified practitioners. So, Mr. President, you can't just get up and call yourself a teacher anymore. You have to be at a particular standard. You have to be licensed. You can't just wake up and say, hey, I'm this teacher of this subject. You have to be licensed by the JTC. This is phenomenal, Mr. President. And so when someone stands up and says they're a teacher, you know that this is someone that is well trained. This is someone who is doing continuous professional development. This is someone who is of prestige. And so, Mr. President, this licensing framework for teachers is also grounded in Vision 2030. And if you look at Goal 1.1 of the Education Sector Plan, which is titled Quality Educators Are Attracted and Retained, you will see several references to the JTC. Specifically, sub-action 1.1.3.6 speaks to maintaining a comprehensive registration and licensing scheme for all teachers. That was to be completed, and the date in Vision 2030 says it was to be completed by 2012. Unfortunately, that milestone was missed, but the intent, the vision, and the urgency have remained crystal clear. The JTC bill, with its robust licensing framework and professional standards, is therefore deeply rooted in that Vision 2030 roadmap. The international community has taken similar steps for the advancement of education. The 2015 World Forum on Education held in South Korea, in the Republic of Korea, culminated in a declaration and ministerial commitment for the advancement of education. Regarding teachers, it states, we will ensure that teachers and educators are empowered, adequately recruited, well-trained, professionally qualified, motivated, and supported within well-resourced, efficient, and effectively governed systems. Mr. President, the establishment of the Jamaica Teaching Council is also a response to international norms and regional commitments, such as the UNESCO and the ILO recommendation concerning the status of teachers, which stipulates that, and I quote, teaching should be regarded as a profession. It is a form of public service which requires of teachers expert knowledge and specialized skills acquired and maintained through rigorous and continuous study, end quote. The Education for All in the Americas Regional Framework for Action of 2000 called on the Caribbean community to, I quote, implement systems for assessing teacher performance and for measuring the quality and levels of achievements in the profession, following basic standards agreed upon by teachers' unions and other organizations. And we also see it in some other action plans. We have the La Romaine Plan of Action for Caribbean Teachers, which was agreed at the Commonwealth ILO Caribbean Teachers Policy Framework. And that called for the promotion of high standards for teacher education and teacher performance by means of establishing regional and national teaching councils to monitor, direct, and advise on the development and maintenance of standards for teaching and teacher education. And also it speaks to ensuring that teachers and teacher representatives participate in the process that culminates with the acceptance of the standards. So, Mr. President, domestically, regionally, internationally, we have noted the importance of the teaching profession. Teachers, as we've said, are the backbone of the education system. And to get better outcomes, we need to help our teachers to be even better, more dynamic educators. And we're doing this in many ways already. I noted during our debate of the appropriation bill that we have provided vouchers for laptops for all teachers in the system. We have opened up opportunities for STEM training. That's a key thing. We want to empower our teachers. Our teachers want to be empowered to teach STEM using the STEM methodology, and we're working on that. We also, very importantly, Mr. President, implemented the single largest increase in compensation for teachers in Jamaica. And I shall say it again. We implemented the single largest increase in compensation for teachers. Mr. President, as an administration, we support our teachers. Today is about continuing that show of support by introducing a legal framework for improving standards and protecting the standards of our teachers. What the government seeks to do with the bill and the subsequent licensing regime is to introduce more robust standards for the teaching profession to improve student outcomes. Ultimately, that is what our education system is about, student outcomes. It is about giving our students the best opportunities for success through the empowerment of our best teachers. It must also be repeated over and over that this bill was not drafted in secret, Mr. President. Over the last 15 years, the draft JTC bill being considered today was made public through websites, town hall meetings, and stakeholder consultations. Mr. President, the JTC bill has been the subject of consultations and redrafting under 7 ministers of education, many ministers of state, 6 permanent secretaries, and 15 presidents of the JTA, and scores of stakeholder consultations. And I have to again take the opportunity to thank all the players over the years, starting with Minister Maxine Henry Wilson. I called her earlier this week to tell her that what she started, we are trying to complete now. She developed the first framework. Former Education Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, took it even further. He passed the baton to former Minister Thwaites. He then did his piece and sent it on to Ministers Reid and Samuda, and ultimately culminating in the stellar work of Minister Williams, and took the bill through the long and comprehensive joint select process. Behind the scenes, Dr. Gordon, head of the Jamaica Teaching Council, served as a steady hand and resource. The ministry's legal unit, headed by Anastasia Gordon, moved in lockstep with the JTC. Stakeholders, namely the JTA, has been with us at the table since the beginning. So many more individuals and entities supported this bill over many years. They're too numerous to name, Mr. President. It is through and the Attorney General Chambers, it is through their hard work and dedication that I can pilot this bill here today. Mr. President, I move into a summary of the JTC bill. The Jamaica Teaching Council Bill 2025 seeks to professionalize, regulate, and elevate the teaching profession in Jamaica. Emerging from 2 decades of consultations and recommendations, beginning with the 2004 Education Task Force, the bill is the culmination of extensive stakeholder engagement under successive administrations. The objectives of the bill are to establish the Jamaica Teaching Council as a statutory body, regulate entry, conduct, and professional development of teachers, maintain registers of teachers, role of instructors, and enforce standards of teacher competence and ethics, promote teaching as a respected, professional, and accountable discipline aligned with Jamaica's education transformation agenda. Mr. President, the JTC applies to all educators, including early childhood, school-based and home-based educators, as well as instructors and tutors, with some exceptions, example, persons teaching their own child only. This legal framework will be administered by the Jamaica Teaching Council with authority for teacher registration, licensing, fitness assessments, and continuous professional development. A board of governors, which comprises 31 members, and professional practice and conduct committee will manage policy, discipline, and oversight. The responsible minister retains limited power to issue policy directions, but is excluded from interfering in specific cases. In terms of new inventions, the Jamaica Teaching Council Act will introduce provisions that differentiate between registered teachers, licensed teachers, and authorized instructors. It will introduce a fit and proper requirement, including criminal background checks to teach. It will provide special pathways for skilled professionals without traditional teaching credentials to receive temporary authorization to teach. So that would have been like when I taught in high school. I wasn't a trained teacher, but I taught in high school, and there's now a provision in relation to that, Senator Brown. The legislation also sets out clear procedures for...
Yeah. Sorry. I'm going to ask Senators Brown and Senators Brown and Mark. You cannot do. Look here. You want to speak to each other? You can go around the back here, you know? Or you can go there, or so forth. You cannot be shouting across the chamber. But even your leader cannot hear what is being presented because of your voice behind him, Senator Brown. So, Senator Brown, one hand can't clap. So let's cut it out. And Senator Morgan, I ask you, please, just tone it down. All right? This is an important. And look at the students. We have students, and look how both of you behaving. Both of, and I'm asking you to just tone it down. Minister, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. What you weren't able to hear was in relation to the fact that the Act will also provide special pathways for skilled professionals without traditional teaching credentials to receive temporary authorization to teach. Yes, no, that's, yes. So for us, I think we were both, I don't know if you have a teacher certificate. All right. So both of us would have taught in high school, but we weren't trained teachers. And so this now gives provisions in relation to how we become authorized to teach in a school and a particular time in order to get licensed. So the legislation also sets out clear procedures for complaints, investigations, disciplinary actions, and appeals. An appeal tribunal with independent authority to review decisions made by the JTC or employers will be established. Sanctions include warnings, reprimands, suspensions, or revocation of teaching privileges. With respect to penalties, offenses related to unauthorized teaching or misrepresentation incur fines of up to $500,000 or up to $1.5 million Jamaican dollars or imprisonment not exceeding 12 months under Clause 24 and Clause 26, respectively. Offenses with penalties up to $1 million are outlined in Clause 25. Finally, Mr. President, the bill also includes transitional provisions. Mr. President, teachers already registered under the Education Act are grandfathered into the new system, but must apply for a license or authorization within 24 months. Existing disciplinary orders also remain valid under the new regime. I must also note that the bill ensures protection of terms and pensions for current public officers transferring into the new JTC structure. Mr. President, the JTC bill marks a historic step in transforming Jamaica's education system, promoting accountability, continuous development, and safeguarding the integrity of the teaching profession for our children in the public interest. For the benefit of my colleagues, I've prepared a clause-by-clause overview of all 84 clauses of the bill, Mr. President. But due to the length of the legislation and our time constraints, I will move expeditiously. When I timed it, it would take me 4 hours to do the overview of the bill. But I will not speak for 4 hours today, and I don't think you want to hear me for 4 hours. So I'm going to go through quickly, Mr. President, and go through the clauses that I think we need to highlight and to give us a good understanding of what it is we're being asked to approve. All right, thank you. The Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025 has 11 parts, which total 84 clauses and 7 schedules, Mr. President. Mr. President, Part 1 of the bill encompasses clauses 1 to 5. And as I said, I'm only going to pick up the key clauses. Clause 1, the short title which indicates the name of the legislation, which is the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2025, which shall come into operation on a day to be appointed by the minister by notice published in the Gazette. It also provides for different provisions of the Act to come into operation on different days for flexibility with regards to operationalization of the Act. Clause 2, which is the interpretation section, it provides definitions for several terms that are used throughout the bill, and that's an important component, and I won't go through those definitions. Clause 4 indicates the persons to which the Act will apply. And these are a person who teaches in an early childhood institution, a person who teaches in a school, whether in a public education institution or in an independent school. C, an instructor. D, a guidance counselor or dean of discipline, whether in a public education institution or in an independent school. E, a person who teaches in an approved home education program, including a parent who teaches a child who is not his or her child. F, a private tutor, whether practicing full-time or part-time. G, a person who teaches in an education program that prepares persons to become teachers. H, an inspector. I, a principal. And J, such other persons as may be designated by the minister by order published in the Gazette. Having regard to the impact these categories of persons have on the quality of the teaching profession, it is important that the Act applies to all of these. Further, Clause 5 also indicates that the Act will not apply to a person who teaches on an ad hoc voluntary basis without pay, reward, or other consideration. B, a person who teaches his or her own child and no other child in an approved home education program. So, for example, if I decide to homeschool my child, I will not be required to get a license or an authorization to teach, as the Act is not applicable to me. This is done to strike a balance between flexibility and standards. Clause 5, which indicates that the best interest of the child is paramount, and the definition of the best interest of the child is construed in accordance with Section 2.2 of the Child Care and Protection Act, which outlines the factors to be considered in this regard. I have to note, Mr. President, that during some JSC meetings, a proposal to regulate support services, and these are like your IT officers that are working in the schools, and others that support learning, that they could be included. This new framework is quite substantive, Mr. President, and it will require a major undertaking to implement. As a matter of priority, we believe it would be best to focus on teachers, get this new system working, then we can branch out into other areas. This is not to say that support services and those that provide support services will not have standards. Administratively, the JTC will explore ways to craft and publish standards for teaching support services to signal the long-term policy position of the government to also regulate those individuals. Mr. President, Part 2, which consists of clauses 6 to 19, treats with matters such as the establishment of the Jamaica Teaching Council, the constitution and operations of the council, its functions, establishment of a board of governance and its functions, ministerial directions, cooperation between the council and other authorities. And I particularly now move to Clause 7 of the bill, which outlines the functions of the council, which includes the registration and licensing of teachers, granting of an authorization to teach, investigating the fitness to teach of any person who is or who is seeking to be registered and licensed or granted an authorization to teach under the Act. They will also be determining the eligibility requirements for registration as a teacher, the granting of a license, the granting of an authorization to teach. They will give oversight, develop, and deliver professional development programs and activities in relation to the professional standards and code of ethics established by the Council in consultation with stakeholders in the education sector. Clause 10 provides that the Council, after consultation with stakeholders in the education sector, develop and apply professional standards detailing the abilities, experience, knowledge, skills, and conduct expected to be displayed by teachers and instructors. These standards will inform regulatory decision-making and underpin the work carried out by the Council. And you notice with everything, there is this condition that it is after consultation with stakeholders. The entire process, as it's been consultative to get to this point, will continue to be consultative when the JTC is in effect. Under Clause 11, the Council, with the approval of the Minister, will be responsible to develop a continuous professional development framework in consultation with stakeholders in education. The Council will also be responsible to review and approve continuous professional development programs, as well as to deliver programs in specific areas such as professional standards. Clause 12 of the bill seeks to establish a board of governance of the Council, and this received extensive discussions in the JSC. And when you look at the report, you will see how extensive that discussion is. And this is outlined in Part B of the 3rd schedule, and it includes 31 members appointed by the Minister for a term not exceeding 3 years and are eligible for a reappointment. However, no member shall be permitted to serve longer than 2 consecutive terms. Of these 31 members, at least half are registered and licensed teachers. The composition also includes representatives of religious denominations which own educational institutions in Jamaica, representatives from parents who engage in approved home education programs, representatives of parent support groups for mentally and physically challenged children, and as such, the board as constituted covers a wide cross-section of stakeholder groups. Part B of the 3rd schedule also outlines matters concerning the board, such as disqualification for appointment, revocation, filling of vacancies, remuneration, and protection of members from action, suit, prosecution, and other proceedings. Clause 13 outlines the functions of the board, which shall be responsible for determining the policies and overseeing the general administration of the Council. It is proposed that the Council will be headed by a Chief Executive Officer and staffed by a registrar and other employees. Clause 13 also provides for the establishment of the Professional Practice and Conduct Committee, PPCC for short, by the board, which will be responsible for inquiring into disciplinary matters relating to registered teachers, licensed teachers, and instructors. The constitution and operations of the PPCC and otherwise in relation thereto are outlined in the 4th schedule and provides that the PPCC shall comprise of 5 members, which includes 2 members of the board and an attorney at law with at least 10 years' experience. The members of the PPCC shall hold office for such period not exceeding 3 years and should be eligible for reappointment for another 3-year period. The 4th schedule also treats with other matters in respect of PPCC, such as disqualification for appointment and so on. I'm going to move to Part 3 of the bill, Mr. President. We're moving along quite well. Part 3 of the bill treats with registers and roll of instructors and are detailed throughout clauses 20 to 23. Clause 20 requires the Council to keep and maintain accurate and up-to-date registers to be known as Register of Registered Teachers and Register of Licensed Teachers. These registers will record prescribed information such as the person's full name, address, qualification, category of registration or license as the case may be, date of commencement, statement of any condition attached to the registration or license, and the expiry date of such condition. I'm coming to that. Elements will be public. All of their information will not be public, but I'm going to come to that. So Clause 20 also allows the Council to keep other registers as it thinks fit and publish rules governing the operations of such registers. The bill provides that each register, or part thereof, shall be published by the Council as may be prescribed. Clause 21 requires the Council to keep and maintain accurate and up-to-date registers to be known as a register to be known as the roll of instructors that records prescribed information in respect of persons who are granted an authorization to teach. Clause 22 allows for the inspection of the registers and roll of inspectors. For the purposes of the clause, the terms register and roll information are defined. The clause allows a registered and licensed teacher or instructor to inspect the register and roll information in respect of him or her. Registered and licensed teachers may also authorize their employers or prospective employers to inspect the register and roll. This will contain all of the information on the registers and roll of instructors. Further, the Council is required to make the register and roll information open to inspection by a member of the public and that register or roll shall be published electronically on the internet and in the Gazette. It must be noted, though, that the register and roll information, the public one, will only contain the names of the persons and whether such persons are registered, licensed, or authorized to teach. So publicly, all you'll be able to know is that this person is a licensed teacher. You're not going to know their address. You're not going to know all of the other information that's in the official roll. That will only be provided to employers or to the teacher who wants to inspect what information is there. Part 4 of the bill treats with restrictions on teaching, and the relevant offenses are outlined in clauses 24 to 26, and I would have mentioned those. Mr. President, Part 5 of the bill is concerned with eligibility requirements and are outlined in clauses 27 to 34. I'm going to go to clause 29 in particular. Clause 29 allows for persons who do not possess the requisite teaching qualifications to be granted an authorization to teach. In order to be granted an authorization to teach, the council must be satisfied that A, the prospective employer of the person is unable to find a licensed teacher who is suitable to fill a teaching position. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to go and get someone to teach maths because I don't have one. You have to show that you have tried to get a trained teacher to do that role before you can get someone who is not licensed to teach. So they will be checking to make sure that you are unable to find a licensed teacher. B, the person has the skills and experience appropriate to advance the learning of a student or group of students. C, the person has skills that are in short supply. D, the person has the knowledge, qualifications, skills, or training reasonably considered by the council to be relevant to a teaching position that the person has been offered. And E, the person is a fit and proper person to teach. F, the person has the English language skills, both written and oral, prescribed as suitable for an authorization to teach. And G, the person is not a disqualified person. And H, meets any other prescribed requirements for the grant of an authorization to teach. It is important to note that the category authorization to teach was created to enable highly skilled persons like Senator Crawford to contribute to the school system in specific contexts and to satisfy specific needs. Clause 30 allows for the council to impose conditions on a person's registration. Clause 31 makes provision for a person to apply in writing to the council for a condition to be reviewed and amended or cancelled. So just because a condition is there does not mean that's the end of it. You can apply to have that reviewed or cancelled or even changed. Clause 34 provides for requirements that must be satisfied for a person to be considered fit and proper to teach. This is important. These requirements are set out in the 5th schedule of the bill, which provides that the council will be required to investigate whether an individual seeking to be registered as a teacher, licensed to practice as a teacher, or granted an authorization to teach is a fit and proper person to teach. Additionally, the council may investigate the fitness to teach of a registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor if it becomes aware of circumstances warranting such action. In so doing, the council will have the power to refuse to register, license, or grant an authorization to teach to someone whom it considers to be not a fit and proper person to teach, and to remove from the relevant register or roll any person it subsequently finds to be unfit. In determining whether a person is a fit and proper person to teach, the council will be required to take into account the results of any criminal record check, including any offense of which the person may have been convicted, save and except for any disqualifying offense specified in the 1st schedule. The circumstances of the conviction they will look at, and the lifestyle and conduct of the person subsequent to the conviction. They will look at any behavior that does not meet the professional standards or code of professional ethics, prior applications for registration, and so on. And those are all pointed out. Mr. President, Part 6 is quite substantive. Part 6 of the bill treats with matters concerning application for registration, licensing, and authorization to teach, and are outlined in clauses 35 to 49. Clauses 35, 36, and 37 look at areas in which the Act applies, and it notes that it shall apply you should apply. When you're applying to become registered or for a license, you should apply in the prescribed form and manner to be registered, licensed, or authorized to do so, as the case may be, and have the requisite documentation provided. Clause 39 requires the Council to allow an applicant a reasonable opportunity to make representations to the Council in relation to any negative information they find in determining whether the applicant is a fit and proper person to teach. Clause 43 has a total of 10 subclauses and outlines how the Council may decide an application by a person for registration as a teacher, licensed as a teacher, or an applicant for the grant of an authorization to teach. Under this provision, having considered the relevant application, the Council can register the applicant as a teacher, grant the applicant a license, or grant the applicant an authorization to teach, as the case may be. The Council may also decide not to register the applicant as a teacher, or decide not to grant the license or the authorization to teach. Under this provision, the Council is required to notify the applicant of its decision in writing and provide evidence of the registration, licensing, or authorization to teach. In the event that the Council decides not to grant the relevant application, the Council is required to give the applicant an information notice within 45 days or as soon as reasonably practical of its decision. The applicant is then afforded the right to appeal.
Minister is going to require some time to complete the...
Mr. President, the member's time for speaking having expired, and given the comprehensive and gracious nature of her presentation, I would suggest 5 hours. She be allowed an additional 5 hours.
5 hours?
To complete her presentation.
But no, I'm not giving any open... Well, the minister's presentation. I'm not giving any open-ended time to complete. So, Minister, 5 hours you have. The minister is requesting time to complete, Leader Bunting, time to complete the presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
Thank you very much, Senator Bunting, for giving me the additional time, and I think I'm making good time in getting through them.
On the advice of the clerk, I'm going to take the 120 motion now so that she doesn't. So the Minister Hill. Mr. President.
Given the time, that's at approximately 1:20. Absolutely, Mr. President. I know you know the place. We're asking that the time be extended beyond 1:20 to complete the business, 1:30 to complete the business of the Senate.
Thank you. Those in favor? Aye. And just as a matter of information, I'm going to meet with the leaders of both to determine if and when we need a break. The staff needs a break. Please continue, Minister.
I believe I was at clause 44, which indicated the period of validity of a license or an authorization to teach. A license shall not be longer than 5 years and may be renewed for further periods not exceeding 5 years for each period. On the other hand, an authorization to teach shall not be longer than 2 years from the date it has been granted and may be renewed for only 2 further periods not exceeding 2 years for each period, resulting in a maximum number of 6 years. It is expected that a person who has been granted an authorization to teach and is minded to continue to teach will take the necessary actions to meet the requirements to be granted a license to teach upon being granted the maximum period for an authorization to teach. Part 7 of the bill treats with complaints, and this is provided for under Clause 50 in particular. So, Mr. President, Clause 50 outlines the situations in which a person may make a complaint in writing to the Council against a registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor. These include allegations that the registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor has failed to comply with a condition imposed on his or her registration, license, or authorization to teach, that he or she is not a fit and proper person to teach, or has been charged with or convicted of an offense. Part 8 of the bill outlines the procedures as it relates to investigations, disciplinary inquiry, and action in relation to a registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor, and are outlined in clauses 51 to 64. Mr. President, Clause 51 provides that a complaint that is received by the Council against a registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor can either be referred to the PPC for investigation by an independent investigator, or in the alternative, the conducting of an inquiry, or 2, the board of the relevant public education institution, or to any other employer for disciplinary action. Further, the provision requires a board of a private public education institution, or any other employer who is in receipt of a complaint that was made directly to it to notify the Council of such complaint in writing. So if a school gets a complaint, it has to notify the Council of that complaint. The provision also requires the board of the institution or any other employer who is in receipt of a complaint, whether same was referred by the Council or made directly to it, to hand down a decision within 6 months. We can't have allegations just hanging over people's head forever. So we have to have a time period in, and this says that if the school gets the notice, they have to investigate it within 6 months of the referral or the receipt of the complaint, as the case may be, failing which the Council shall refer the matter to the PPC for inquiry if the school is not acting. Clause 53 then requires the Council to submit the report upon receipt to the PPCC. Once you get a report from the school, you send it to the PPCC for an inquiry into the complaint, where the PPCC, upon considering the report, finds that there is insufficient evidence or that the complaint is frivolous or vexatious, and there will be cases like that. The Council shall advise the complainant, any person against whom the complaint was made, and where appropriate, the employer of the licensed teacher or instructor, of the facts and reasons for its findings, and the Council shall take no further action in relation to the complaint. Clause 57 gives a party to an inquiry the right to representation by a body which represents the majority of teachers in Jamaica. And we all know that means the Jamaica Teachers Association. So if that individual that there is a complaint against has to proceed to a hearing, they have the right to be represented by the JTA as the body that represents the majority of teachers in Jamaica. An attorney at law, they could choose to use that, or any other person, or they may elect to be self-represented. Clause 58 provides that having conducted an inquiry, the PPCC may, depending on the nature or seriousness of the complaint, make the following decisions. 1, issue a warning to the person. 2, censure or reprimand the person. 3, impose such conditions as may be imposed by the Council under Section 32 on the registration, license, or authorization to teach of the person. Or 4, suspend the registration or license. 5, revoke the registration or license of the person. So those are the options. So there are many different options. So it could be as little as a warning, issuing a warning, or revoking the registration or license. Clause 58 also requires the PPCC to issue a report to the Council, which includes its decision, reasons for the decision, the effective date of the decision, and the period that the decision may remain in force. The Council is also responsible to serve a copy of the report within 7 days of receipt on the registered or licensed teacher or instructor who is the subject of the complaint and his or her employer. Under Clause 59, the PPCC has the discretion to suspend the registration, license, or authorization to teach, as the case may be, of a registered teacher, a licensed teacher, or an instructor who has been charged with an offense. Also, where proof is given to the PPCC via a certificate of conviction from the court that a registered teacher, a licensed teacher, or an instructor has been convicted of a disqualifying offense, the PPCC shall revoke the registration, license, or authorization to teach, as the case may be, as soon as possible and without further inquiry. Clause 62 provides that where a person's conviction for a qualifying offense is overturned or quashed on appeal, that person is no longer a disqualified person for the purposes of this Act. And the Council shall instruct the registrar to add the name of the person to the relevant register or the roll of instructors, reinstate the registration, and reissue the license or the authorization to teach to the person on the same conditions it was held immediately before the revocation. And it should also be published in the Gazette and a daily newspaper circulated in Jamaica, and notify the employer of the person of the development forthwith. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the clause also makes provision for disciplinary proceedings to be commenced or continued against the registered teacher, licensed teacher, or instructor who has been reinstated in order to determine whether he or she is a fit and proper person to teach. We're moving along quite well, Mr. President. I'm at Part 9 of the bill, which treats with appeals and is outlined in clauses 65 to 71. Clause 65 establishes the Appeal Tribunal, whose constitution and matters relating thereto are further outlined under the 6th Schedule. Under the 6th Schedule, the bill provides for a 5-member tribunal and includes a retired judge of a superior court of record or an attorney at law with at least 15 years' experience who will serve as chairman of the tribunal. A retired teacher and a parent nominee will also be there. It is proposed that the members hold office for a period not exceeding 2 years and shall be eligible for reappointment. The schedule also provides for matters connected to the tribunal, such as disqualification for appointment, revocation, filling of vacancies, and the power of the tribunal to regulate its own proceedings. Clause 66 provides the right of appeal to the tribunal by any person who is aggrieved by a decision of the Council, the PPCC, the board of an educational institution, or any other employer of the licensed teacher or an instructor. This appeal must be made within 28 days of being notified of the said decision. Clause 70 gives a party to a hearing the right to representation by an attorney at law or any other person, or may elect to be self-represented, or, of course, could be the JTA. Clause 71 outlines the decision of the tribunal, and in this regard provides that on hearing and appeal, the tribunal shall give its decision in writing within 42 days. So this cannot take forever, or such longer periods as it may reasonably require. The tribunal may make the following decisions in respect of a decision made by the Council: the PPCC, the board of the institution, of the educational institution, or any other employer. They could, 1, dismiss the appeal and confirm the decision, 2, allow the appeal or set aside the decision, or 3, vary the decision. Clause 71 also provides that where a longer period of time is required for the tribunal to give its decision, the tribunal shall inform the parties and provide reasons for the need for additional time. It's not just, I need more time. You have to say why that additional time is needed. The tribunal, having made its decision, may also give directions to the board of the educational institution or other employer as it considers appropriate, including a direction to reinstate the licensed teacher or instructor, as the case may be. Mr. President, Part 10 of the bill treats with general provisions under the bill, which are outlined at clauses 72 to 78. Clause 72 empowers the minister to make regulations generally for the proper carrying out of the purposes and provisions of the Act, after consultations with the council and other stakeholders in the education sector. I'm going to move on, Mr. President, to the last part. Mr. President, Part 11 of the bill outlines the transitional provisions and are captured.
These things are never as long as they appear, you
know. Mr. President, Part 11 of the bill outlines the transitional provisions and are captured at clauses 79 to 84. I point to clause 80. Under clause 80, from the appointed day, any person who was registered under the Education Act as a trained teacher or an authorized teacher immediately before the appointed day is deemed to be registered or enrolled, as the case may be, on the same terms and conditions, including suspension and period of registration, as applied in respect of that person in the appropriate register or roll as provided under the bill. That person is required to, within 24 months or such longer period as may be prescribed from the appointed day, apply to the council to be licensed or authorized to teach, as the case may be. Mr. President, I didn't go through all the clauses, I went through the key ones. Yes, that you wanted, yes. So, Mr. President, that is my very short explanation of the clauses. I know it was really short. I welcome the support of my colleague senators in, yes, I'm going to do that separately. And I've kind of incorporated, Mr. President, I tried to incorporate the report, and the report is essentially the bill that we have here is as a result of the report. And so when the JSC, yes, it comes from the JSC, the Joint Select Committee. So they reviewed the 22 bill and they gave a lot of comments, and those comments are reflected in this bill that we have before us.
You have tabled the report along
Yes,
with the table?
yes, I did.
For information?
Yes. Yes, yes. So it's not the debate, Mr. President, I'm asking that it be on both. And Mr. President, this, even though we speak to, issues where there may be reports of impropriety, or we're looking at fit and proper regulations, I have to note that that's not clearly what the bill is about. The bill is really about how we professionalize our education system. The majority of our teachers are wonderful. They're doing an absolutely amazing job. From time to time, there may be individuals who come into the profession who should not be there. And what this bill is doing is protecting our teachers from those and protecting the provisions from the profession from those individuals. So this is about professionalizing the profession of teaching. It is saying that teaching is important. It is really great. There are standards around it. And if you fall afoul, then there are consequences to it. And so, Mr. President, I am asking my colleagues to please support me in this bill and in moving this bill, which has taken 21 years for us to get to this point. Mr. President, I welcome all the support of my colleague senators to pass this important bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before your arrival, and you've been updated, the minister had very reasonably agreed, notwithstanding the notice, that we would conclude the debate at the next sitting. And especially I had made that request because of some illness of members on the side who wanted to participate, but also because we got 3 pages of amendments last night, and it would have been difficult to integrate them into see, how they affected the bill, a 99-page bill, in just overnight. So I want to acknowledge that accommodation. And
you were absent.
And you're insisting that we must all speak today. And again, just by way of update, I didn't pull that 5 hours out of the air. The minister earlier had said that to properly deal with the clause by clause, she would have needed 4+ hours. So just in case she had changed her mind during the course of her presentation, I wanted to ensure that she had sufficient time to address this very important piece of legislation. Well, I will also use, as prompted by my colleague and your similar name, as soon as the deputy clerk stops distracting the minister. We'll pause. Yes. I would also, just to complete our discussion, was that I would make a brief response today, but the substantial contributions would be made in the next sitting. You just pay attention.
It is a Brazilian chicken.
But let me also say, Minister, I want to thank you for the not just comprehensive presentation, but you are gracious enough to acknowledge that this has been a long relay. And, you know, clearly graciousness is in inverse proportion to size on that side.
Oh,
but
not my side.
to thank you for on that side.
But you don't understand
but I appreciate your recognizing that it's been a relay, and really this bill has had an elephantine gestation. And I am not an expert on the education or the bill, but it has come across, I've come into contact with it a few times over the years, or decades, as you say. And I am encouraged by the fact that most of the submissions or the recommendations, suggestions from the JTA have been incorporated into this draft, because at various points there was a concern that teachers were being blamed for the state of the education system. And as someone who is married to a teacher, I could never be a part of that argument, or put it this way, I could never allow that argument to stand. So I am particularly pleased that those suggestions have been taken into account in the updated draft of the bill, which is before us today. While this has had an elephantine gestation, it is with us today, and it is an important piece of legislation. The fact is, not just by what you have said today, but by various reports from Dr. Davis coming right up to Dr. Pattison, that the state of our education system leaves a lot to be desired. It cannot take us forward, not just to 2030, but beyond. The fact that 18% of school leavers, I believe it is now, only 18% achieve the 5 subjects with math and English that is considered a graduate, so to speak, rather than just a school leaver. That alone speaks to the urgency of this matter. We must also recognize that this is a necessary but not sufficient step to really develop a fit-for-purpose education system. This addresses one dimension, but there are many more that needs to be addressed. Some of which were mentioned in the budget debate, or even the debate on the appropriations bill by my colleagues on this side, addressing issues of student nutrition, student transportation, and we talk about professionalizing the teachers, or making the teachers' profession the equivalent of other professional groups, lawyers, doctors, and so on. But I am sure the president of the JTA would agree with me that prestige without the corresponding compensation is of little value. Again, speaking not as an expert, but speaking as a parent, I have been pained to see that some of the best teachers of my children are lost to migration year after year. And if we have to be able to address retention of teachers, and it's not just a matter of replacing someone with another body, whether qualified or not. They may be qualified on paper, but often it is the teachers with the most initiative that are spotted and identified and removed. And I know in particular, my son's classroom teacher was exceptional in terms of the lengths they went to. Not just what they taught in the classroom, but they would make YouTube videos and, really a creative approach to getting the instruction across in ways that allowed a wide variety of learners to be able to appreciate and absorb the material in an effective way. And therefore, whenever one of those types of teachers left, it literally was painful, because I knew that at the school that my child went to, those students were deprived of that sort of exceptional teacher. So we will expect that this measure will be accompanied by must be accompanied by a whole set of complementary measures to bring our teaching system, or education system, into line with what is required today. Minister, I have a couple specific questions. I have a couple specific questions on the bill. Just a couple. The first has to do with Section 4, which is the application of the Act, and in particular, the exemptions, where it says the Act does not apply to, and it's really speaking to the homeschooling situation, that a person who teaches his or her own child and no other child, and I assume this would also apply to children, in an approved home education program. I confess I'm not familiar with the process of approving the home education program, but I see it as a potential loophole where the best interests of the child may not be served by homeschooling. But I would love you to just speak to the process of approving this home education program. Not that I want to deprive people who are that way inclined from homeschooling, but just to ensure that the best interests of the child are protected, because not every parent will be able to adequately provide for the education of their children, and not just because they want to do so. And so I would appreciate just hearing a little bit more about that when you come to respond at the close. And then the other specific area I would ask you to look at is the Part 3, 21, well, Section 20 generally, where I believe there is a public interest to be served by having the register of licensed teachers, or the register of registered teachers, as the case may be, to be a public register. And I can understand something personal like the address of the teacher not be included in that. I don't have any problem with that, because the right to privacy of the teacher should be respected. So anything which would violate that. But in terms of the execution of their professional responsibility, I can't see why we would not basically publish everything else that is listed here. The qualification of the full name of the person, obviously, the qualification, the category of license, the date of commencement of the license, and so on. I mean, I don't understand why, as a parent, I should not be able to access that about the teachers at the school. As I said, I am perfectly supportive of anything that is the private information of the teacher not being put on a website or whatever, even if the school or the regulator may require that. But I think the more information that we have, it affords parents to be assured or better assured that they have the right teachers and are the right school. So with those few specific questions, Minister, I would say, in a 99-page bill, sometimes the devil is in the details. And I expect with time some of my colleagues, in particular our Shadow Minister of Education, will have some things to say at the next sitting. But in terms of the principle, we are certainly in support of the bill, and we are glad that the elephantine gestation that it has taken to get to this point is almost at an end, and we support you in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Bunting. Senator Hill, if you can spare us the...
Mr. President, it is not intended to do further business today. Oh, you're going to suspend the... I thought you were going to do that first, so you should call you.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion regarding the report on the JTC bill, of which I gave earlier. So this is just on the JSC bill. The report of the JSC.
The question is that the debate on both the bill and the report be suspended for a date to be announced.
Take the
report is to be taken.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So you're
it's fine, I can do both. I can do both together.
The report is to be taken.
So the report is being taken. Okay. So the question is that the debate on the bill be suspended. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
Mr. President, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved, which is the Joint Select Committee report.
Those in favor? Against? Minister Hill.
Given that that addition has been taken care of now, Mr. President, it's not intended to do any further business today, so I ask that the business of the Senate be suspended for a date to be announced.
Yes, the Senate will be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against?
You and your fancy words.
This was pain-free.
Today.
I'm not allowed to speak for myself. They make all the decisions.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere by myself. They're afraid I'll escape.
See how my hand and face bruise up? Them beat me cause me say me tired.
I'm only 13, but they said if I work harder, they will allow me to go home.
Me no have no birth paper, no ID. Them take all of my documents, them.
Victims of human trafficking are all around us and they need our help. Forced labor is one of the many forms of human trafficking. If you see something, say something. Report suspected cases of human trafficking. Call the nearest police station, 119 or 888-PROTECT.
Good afternoon. My name is Hadria Stewart and I'm a member of the Kingston Technical High School family. Today's lesson will be on sentence errors. Now let's get into our objectives for today. What do we hope to achieve today? So by the end of today's session, you, the candidate, should be able to explain what a sentence fragment is and how to correct this error in writing. And I'd given you as an assignment before, so you should know by now. You should also be able to identify run-on sentences and learn how best to correct them. And you should also be able to track the development of an article from the planning stage to the completion of the extended writing task. And we started this yesterday. Let's look at this. That's a pizza, right? I'm sure many of you love pizza. Now you realize that a section of the pizza has been cut out, all right? We talk about pizza slices. So I know some of you would like the entire pizza for yourself, but if you don't live alone, this may not be possible, so it's highly likely that you're going to have to share. So it's highly likely that you'll get a fragment of the pizza. I know you don't like that, but that's how it is. So a fragment is a portion, right? A section, a piece, not the entire thing. Okay, so we're moving from the pizza now to look at this. Examine this thought, and you can tell me whether or not it's a complete thought. Suggested another week